What if I told you that Midnight Motorist reveals one of the biggest mysteries of this franchise? On the surface, these cryptic clues make us feel completely lost, but the story wouldn't be so vague if it didn't have something to hide. The bigger picture is at play here, and we don't even realize how important this minigame actually is. After the 10th anniversary of FNAF, there has been a recent resurgence in the community, and along with it came some new theories. New evidence finally clarifying there are two spirits in Golden Freddy. We may have even reached a consensus on the crying child's name, Dave. Five Laps at Freddy's, the new spin-off card game, is dropping us lore reveals too, and there is a lot of new information to suggest William Afton is our orange guy. A spring Bonnie antenna is attached to the Midnight Motorist playable car, the cut description telling us it's the perfect car for fleeing a crime scene. William used this car to flee the scene of Charlotte's murder. His house is a perfect match to the one we see on the FNAF 4 title screen. But what else are we missing? What else has this minigame been hiding from us? Before we find that out, I want to clarify my theory criteria for a Midnight Motorist. It's always important to establish rules so everyone can conceptualize my thought process. First of all, I want to treat visual clues as a priority. These details are crucial to determine environmental storytelling and should be solved using the best evidence. Categorizing these details individually allows us to determine which option is the strongest frontrunner. Next, games are stronger than the books. The games will always hold the most value. I will address the books and the movie in this theory, but will only use them as supporting evidence to validate information expressed in the games. And finally, the timeline is a last priority. We will not let the timeline affect our decisions for determining what these clues mean. Midnight Motorist is the top priority here, so we must build the timeline off the minigame, not the other way around. We found out who Orange Guy is, but we still need to figure out the rest of the story. Midnight Motorist is all about William's long drive home, having the option to stop by a few mysterious spots along the way. When William returns home, we are greeted by a person who sits on a couch and watches TV. Leave him alone tonight. He's had a rough day. This is Michael Afton. It's a direct callback to Sister Location. Watching his show, Immortal and the Restless. His text and his shirt are gray, which match to what we see in FNAF 4. Michael is known to be the established babysitter of the crying child. I just don't see any strong evidence for the other characters. If this was Elizabeth or Mrs. Afton, there would have been visual confirmation to lead to that intuition. Michael is the most likely candidate under the first rule, and I need to abide by that. After this, William bangs on the door of a character who has male pronouns and also owns a room in the Afton house. Upon further inspection out back, it seems he escaped. This must be the crying child, Michael's brother. The story Hide and Seek proves this. Toby and his older brother Connor are always at odds, and Connor often bullies him for not being better. While Toby has a habit of isolating himself in his room, his older brother Connor likes to sit on the recliner and watch TV. I can't deny this is a glaring parallel to Midnight Motorist, the crying child locking himself in his room while his older brother Mike watches TV, and it lines up perfectly with the family dynamic we see in FNAF 4. This gives us solid confirmation who these characters are. It's also interesting to note that William seems to have violent tendencies toward his child. FNAF 4 does establish that William has a habit of monitoring his child with the Dredbear plush. So is that why his son escaped? Before we can answer that, I want to move on to Juniors. Juniors seems to be the most random location in the series. From the context clues we're given, it seems obvious that it's a bar. The green man says, "Come on man, you know you can't be here. Don't make this more difficult than it has to be." It's exactly like a bouncer banning entry from someone that was outrageously drunk. Even the sign is reminiscent of a bar. But what does 5 Laps at Freddy's show us about juniors? In the course Faz Hills, we notice stands of kids cheering along the race. During the night phase, the crowd starts wearing these masks. The same kids also show up in the Midnight Motorist track, but for some reason, all their stands are crowded at juniors. Even the rest of the stands along the race are empty. Now, why would they choose these kids to surround juniors? Well, because we've seen these masks before, in the party of Happiest Day. And what does Happiest Day share a connection with? A near identical layout to Fredbear's Family Diner from FNAF 4. The position of the tables are exact, even the balloons are the same, and this is supported by Midnight Motorist. The path to the Afton house leads to juniors, just like the path to Fredbear's in FNAF 4. This is backed up by the Silver Eyes novel, when Charlotte takes a trip to visit the abandoned Fredbear's Family Diner. There was a slightly elevated stage at the end of the room. Charlie realized as she looked around that the place had probably once been a dance hall. And a long desk by the entrance that her parents had used for a cash register had a bar. There were even grooves and scratches in the floor where bar stools had once dug their feet. She tried to picture it a dark bar with a country western band playing on the stage. They're describing the mediocre melodies, lining up with the mass shown in Happiest Day. There is a clear connection here. Once Fredbear's closed, it was replaced by Juniors. Juniors is a restaurant bar mix. It's a type of hybrid, like a tavern, where adults can drink alcohol at a bar and have animatronics, the mediocre melodies, that are popular to children as well. The mediocre melodies started off as a knockoff competitor to Freddy's, scooping up the diner once it was sold off. Why is Nedbear's mask randomly blue in the Happiest Day? Nedbear's design may have changed due to copyright. This could even explain why William says ran off to that place. The crying child had a habit of running off to juniors, either to have fun, or maybe even escape his dad. And when the Silver Eyes graphic novel came out, it solidified the connection. Fredbear's has an extremely close resemblance to Junior's, which clarifies this house is the same as this one. And while there is evidence to suggest Charlotte dies at Fredbear's, like the novel continuity, it seems more likely that in the games, she actually dies at Freddy's instead. The book explicitly states these restaurants are located in different towns. Freddy's is in Hurricane, while Fredbear's is in New Harmony. It's why William would be taking the highway to flee the scene, as he would be fleeing from Hurricane to New Harmony. Because the security puppet minigame looks to be in the same alley as the Pizza Sim building, it is very likely Charlotte died there. The ruins of the FNAF 6 pizza place are under the security breach pizzaplex, which is heavily implied to be located in Hurricane. The week before even tells us that kids at Freddy's have a habit of locking each other out of the building, implying this is where she was actually killed. Luckily, there are options to satisfy both sides. Either Charlotte could have just died at Freddy's, or Fredbear's was just relocated to Hurricane in response to the bite. Following the tragedy, Fredbear's relocated to a new building, rebranding to include Freddy and the puppet, along with the springlock suits. Once Charlotte's murder happened, it finally closed its doors, which led to the new building being replaced by Freddy's. Needless to say, this repurposed bar gives us a definitive answer for Juniors, and we're in the business of solving Midnight Motorist, so the third rule needs to come into play here. But now, we have some of the most confusing visual clues remaining. The footprints. When FNAF 6 was released, I don't think anybody could tell you what these footprints actually meant. Any idea was up for debate, but Scott always maintained a pattern for these kinds of confusing details. These are Spring Bonnie's footprints, If Scott wanted to clarify something about this minigame, the next game was his opportunity. And does the next game give us anything about Midnight Motorist? Well, let's look at Ultimate Custom Night, Toy Chica, the high school years. In this anime, Toy Chica spends each day finding ways to win over her new crush. However, her agenda doesn't turn out the way it seems. After each cutscene, Toy Chica's methods get progressively more violent, straight up luring her classmates using different strategies. Take a look at this one.
I told him that someone ran over his dog in front of my house. But once he's there, I'll entice him with warm cookies, lure him inside, invite him inside, and then I'll have him. And once I have him, he'll be mine forever.
In this cutscene, she specifically references how a dog was run over. This is a reference to the Fruity Maze minigame. It's further related to how we hear the car alarm and we see the bloody dog. The girl Susie is then kidnapped by Spring Bonnie using the same strategy, an obvious connection to Fruity Maze. Now why is this related? Well, there's also a Midnight Motorist reference too, where Toy Chica is luring a victim outside of a window from a house.
I told him to come over later. That should be enough. And if he doesn't show up, I'll just go to his house. And if he doesn't open the door, I'll just find a window. Chimney's always an option.
Is this just a coincidence? No. It means that these are both kidnappings. You even see the victims' bodies in her bag after each day. And what do we see in the last cutscene? Toy Chica with her bag of victims under a tree. An exact match to what we see in the Lore Keeper ending of FNAF 6. Same flowers, same tree, same the end. These stories aren't random, they're all about Afton's victims. And what do you need to get the Lore Keeper ending? Complete Security Puppet, Fruity Maze, and Midnight Motorist. Two other minigames that just so happen to be about the graves we see in the Lore Keeper ending. When this wasn't enough for us to understand, it was directly implied to us in the Curse of Dredbear DLC in Help Wanted. The Spring Bonnie suit is outside the FNAF 4 house, which we know is established to be the Midnight Motorist one. The suit has 3 toes, and is the closest visual match to the shape of the feet shown in the minigame to this day. What if William Afton was both the orange guy and the Spring Bonnie suit, the footprints outside that window? It explains why William didn't use the Springlock suit on Charlotte. It started to rain, so we couldn't safely use the suit. How can we confirm this is true? The security puppet window. Not a single drop of rain until we get to the section of Charlotte's murder. Dredbear supports this. Dark clouds, but no rain. Any animatronic would have malfunctioned in the rain. William used his suit before the storm came in. And it always seems so strange to me that Michael's brother, Garrett, is actually kidnapped by William Afton in the movie. So, wait, what am I saying here? I'm saying that the crying child was lured, kidnapped, and killed by William Afton. Yes, his own son, from his own house. Why do I believe this? The mound. It's only something you happen to see if you randomly stumble along it in game. The biggest secret in Midnight Motorist. Just like the UCN cutscene, the mound clarifies that the footprints and kidnapping are a murder. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would Crying Child be a victim of William Afton if we see him die at the end of FNAF 4? Well, do we? We actually don't. Let's take a look at what happens at the end of Night 6. Crying Child is left in a void. His plushies start to disappear. The yellow text says, "I will put you back together." He cries, vanishes, and then we hear a flat line at the end of the game. First of all, we are in a dark void. This establishes that what we are seeing isn't real. He fades away, but does not directly show a dead body. It is all symbolism and part of the child's mind. He survived that initial impact. That's why he made it to the hospital in the first place. However, it is established that what we hear is real, because Michael is apologizing to Crying Child in the background. That being said, it would only make sense for this yellow text to be his father. He's making a promise to his son, and then acting on it by taking him out of the hospital. The flatline at the end is a cliche, an interpretation of death. When you're unhooked from the machine like this, it flatlines just the same way, and I believe this was the hidden intention. This is also the only FNAF 4 cutscene to not take place in reality. Well, actually, not the only one. On night 7, we are presented with a mysterious box, which enshrouds us of a revelation we could never solve. The box is in the same dark void as night 6, which takes place the night right after the crying child's fate. A puzzle, where we could never put the pieces together. In Scott's recent interview with Dawko, he finally provided context to the biggest mystery of this series, the box. He told us that the box was the second half of an idea, meaning that the first half is still out there. If he progressed forward with it, the rest would reappear and fit perfectly into place. This box led to a reveal, but the roads to the box are now different roads to the ones that he planned. And whatever was in the box, he never actually pursued. It's important to note that Scott clarifies the box did not retcon the story, but whatever was in the box was an unexplored part of the story that remained in his subconscious. This moment right here, night 6, was our first half. The box, part 2, was the second half, and our connective tissue between them was the reveal that Dave survived the bite of 83. At the end of night 6, Dave and his plushies all disappear, and if Scott progressed forward with it, they would all reappear in the box. His story was going to be continued, but this was ultimately scrapped. My guess is Scott didn't feel satisfied with how he originally presented this in FNAF 4, and wanted to build up the reveal differently, not by pursuing the box, but using a new road to the story, Midnight Motorist, to make us find the answer to the most mysterious character of the franchise without actually revealing it himself. Would the community accept it that way? Would the community accept it if I made it seem like the child died in the hospital when he didn't? Was this the plot twist we were originally supposed to solve? During the night phase of FNAF 4, you will occasionally spot secrets in the form of pills, an IV stand, and flowers next to your bed. Why would all this medical equipment be located in the FNAF 4 bedroom? It's because they are telling us he survived the bite and was allowed to be medically treated at home. Pills are prescribed for the damage of the bite. Flowers are a get well soon. These items shouldn't exist in a bedroom at all if we know that he dies in the hospital. I want to emphasize we play as Dave in the FNAF 4 gameplay. Many seem convinced that we play as Michael instead. However, I do not believe this is the case, and I'm going to explain why. We know that Scott used Sister Location to clear up a misconception from FNAF 4. What was this misconception? Well, the reveal comes from the Sister Location private room. When you punch the code 1983 on this keypad, the FNAF 4 gameplay areas pop up on the monitors. The bedroom gameplay occurred in 1983, just like the minigames do. The distorted FNAF 1 reverse call, often heard in the background of gameplay, led us to believe Mike had to be the player of FNAF 4. But this was in 1983, and Mike Schmidt would not even hear this call until the 90s. This call was supposed to tell us something else. The crying child's own toys and plushies are scattered across the bedroom, as revealed to us by the survival logbook. The height of the player is enough evidence alone to suggest we are not playing as a teenager or an older brother, but a young child. The FNAF 4 bedroom gameplay was originally an experiment. The breaker room map confirms this. These gray dots reveal that the nightmares actually existed, like the Funtime animatronics. All these areas are labeled as observation chambers, and we finally get this clarity in the short story Didophobia. Rory is a 7-year-old boy who was experimented on in the FNAF 4 bedroom. The vent in his room is pumping gas, Rory is described to be a social outcast, where his only friend speaks to him through a walkie-talkie. His dad is a workaholic who is never home. There is an unknown voice, soothing him, reassuring him to stay because he ran away from home. Though it's implied, he was actually abducted. Rory doesn't even recall running away. The unknown voice is in control and is even able to convince Rory into believing the place is safe enough for him to turn the gas back on. Rory's favorite animal is a bunny, an odd detail considering in Midnight Motorist there are bunny rabbit footprints that lure a runaway child out of a window. And once we make this realization, everything fits into place. Adjacent to the camera feed of the experiment rooms, the Fredbear plush is holding a walkie-talkie. The Fredbear plush is in the experiment bunker next to the chamber monitors where the crying child was experimented on. Why is Dave being monitored by a Fredbear plush disguised as a security camera with a walkie-talkie? Why is the crying child always crying? Because his father is manipulating him, torturing him with experimentation. That soothing voice is the Fredbear plush, gaslighting the child into believing his plushies are his friends. These are my friends. We are still your friends. Do you still believe that? William's observing him because he doesn't want his son to try and escape or let anyone else figure out what's going on. It's why he's so eager to get his son discharged out of the hospital. It is in fact illegal to take your child out of the hospital, even against medical advice. Dave can't escape it. Even after his visit to the hospital, he still ends up back in the experiment chamber. He is scared of Nightmare Fredbear because that's what he sees in the experiments. William, psychic friend Fredbear, knows about what he saw because he caused them to happen. Remember what happens if he catches you. We even see William is the one putting the suits on the employees. He's just messing with his kid, getting the mascot to approach his son in the Fredbear animatronic suit that William knows he's completely afraid of. This cutscene is unique because it's the only one where Michael doesn't bully him. Instead, it's his father. Dave might have been the original subject, but as Didophobia suggests, he isn't the only one. The white dots tell us there are more children being exposed to these experiment chambers, manipulated into believing these places were their own homes. Michael is probably not an experiment victim. He doesn't line up with William's target demographic. These are young and naive children that can be properly manipulated by him. While a child can be impressionable, a teenager Mike's age would see right through this. In FNAF 4, he's completely unfazed, unaware of what's going on. But we still know Mike saw the nightmares. He draws Nightmare Fredbear in the survival logbook. Well, let's read what the logbook actually said. Studies show that you forget half of your dreams in the first 5 minutes after waking. Use this page and the next page to sketch and write notes about your recent dreams. Michael drew Nightmare Fredbear so he wouldn't forget about him. He appeared in his recent dreams. Whatever he experienced was unfamiliar to him, but he was able to tap into the past of his brother while dreaming on the job, similar to the FNAF movie, trying to discover the truth of how his brother went missing. This explains the reverse call, a nod that Michael is dreaming about FNAF 4 during the events of FNAF 1, learning about the tortured experiments of his brother in 1983. He even sleeps next to his dream theory book in the movie, a motif hinting at the idea that everything Michael experienced was all a dream. If this used to be an experiment, these medical Easter eggs are living proof that Dave made it out of the hospital alive. He was legitimately being medically treated at home by his father. Surviving an animatronic bite is definitely plausible in this franchise. The bite of 87 victim survives in the week before, even a child from the FNAF Pizzeria Simulator lawsuits. And this bite doesn't seem so fatal when it's surrounded by a bunch of silly, frivolous lawsuits. If FNAF 4 is around summertime and Midnight Motorist is on Halloween, when Charlotte dies in the novel, this gives Dave nearly half a year of recovery. Why does Mike act protective to his brother when he's established to be his bully? Michael now feels more remorseful towards his brother after the bite incident, lining up with how we see him act at the end of Night 6. But there's still one thing I have yet to address. How does William, the orange guy, the Spring Bonnie kidnapper, not know about killing his own son if he says all these things? The evidence tells us William Afton made those footprints, so if he's unaware of what happened, then there must be a reason he doesn't remember it. And if this is the case, what does Midnight Motorist do to establish that? What do we actually know about William? What we know is that William is drunk to the point where he got himself banned from that bar at Junior's. But why would this detail even matter? Is Scott trying to establish William as just a random alcoholic? Well, maybe he is an alcoholic, a really bad one. One so bad that he is willing to drive up to 200 miles per hour, driving on the wrong side of the road. It's because William Afton is blackout drunk. He had a blackout murder spree. He's so intoxicated that he lost memory of murdering his own son later that night. Think about this. What does Toy Chica actually say in her murder speech? If he doesn't show up, then I'll go to his house. And if he doesn't open the door, then I'll just find a window. This is the exact same method Orange Guy tries in Midnight Motorist. I told you not to close your door. Open the door. I'll find a way in from outside. A window. Almost as if he's repeating his steps because he doesn't even remember what he already did. This is why Junior's is such a fundamental clue. To explain his blackout, William tries to enter Junior's again because he doesn't realize he got kicked out. And as the ultimate guide suggests, William crashes his car into a tree, unknowingly stumbling across the burial of his own son. It's important to note alcoholism can have a significant negative effect on your brain, and it's very serious, but the medical reasoning behind it actually makes sense. Severe alcoholics do experience blackouts, which induce long gaps of impaired memory. This is what's happening with William. Throughout the series, William has not been established to be the best father, to the point where he physically harms Elizabeth in the novels. Alcoholism can inhibit that behavior. This theory gives the best answer to all the 7 Toy Chica victims. These 4 are the MCI, as all the victims get lured to a house. It's not actually Afton's house, it's William pretending in mascot character. He makes false promises to gain their trust, only to lead them into the back room. The secret Foxy Hook victim is Cassidy, as she's known to be the hidden 5th victim of the MCI. Crying Child is the Midnight Motorist victim, lured from his own home. And Charlotte is Pig Patch. William waits after school, Freddy's, until Charlotte comes outside. The only death where instead of luring the victim, she's brutally attacked outside near his car. The actual characters in order is shuffled, as they don't all die day after day. But we already have the clues to find out what the real order is. Dave and Charlotte both die in 1983, implied by the novel, Poppet keypad code, and even the presence of the puppet's tear tracks. 2 years later, the MCI happens. Based upon the year from Into the Pit and the novel, Susie becomes the first MCI victim, mentioned in Ultimate Custom Night. Gabriel is the 3rd victim, as Susie and Jeremy are already stuffed when you become Freddy in Help Wanted, and the rest who weren't covered are already verified by the security breach balloons. 2 for Jeremy, 4 for Fritz, and 5 for Cassidy. Now that we finally have the bigger picture, let's review the full story of what happened that night. William stops by Junior's. He's an alcoholic who wants to take the edge off, but he got so drunk that Junior's had enough and decided to ban him from the bar once and for all. This leads him to dressing up in the Spring Bonnie suit. He lures his son out of his window into the woods. He murders him and buries him in the dirt. He drives to Freddy's to target his business partner's daughter too, Charlotte. On the way to Hurricane, it starts to rain. The suit wasn't an option, so the plan needed to change. William waits for her outside, and once she comes out, he hits her with a shovel and drags her into his car. The same shovel that he just used to bury his son, but Afton drunkenly still wants to try and earn the child's trust, staging a rescue when she wakes up. This obviously doesn't fool her, and Charlotte slips his grasp. This leads into Security Puppet to explain why Charlotte is so distressed. She just escaped from an attempted kidnapping, but the kids locked her out. She can't get back inside, and as we see in the minigame, William catches up to her, ending her life and fleeing the crime scene. At this point, he's in a barely conscious drunk state, racing back to New Harmony. He has already lost track of the entire night. This is where Midnight Motorist starts. He stumbles upon a mysterious dirt pile in a clearing of the woods. He goes back to Junior's because he doesn't remember being kicked out. He comes back home forgetting everything. Michael, feeling guilty for his brother after the bite incident, tries to prevent William from harassing his brother. Of course, William doesn't listen. He furiously bangs on the door of the child's empty room. William is so desperate, he even tries to find him through his window, discovering a trail of footprints. He thinks his son ran off to Junior's and expects him to return home. He'll be sorry when he gets back, when in reality, he won't come back. In a way, this story ends a bit somber. His son is gone forever, and Afton doesn't even realize it. If this is the story Scott was trying to tell, it opens up a huge possibility. We now know who these 7 victims are, but only 6 of them actually move on in Happiest Day. So whoever doesn't receive Happiest Day chose not to move on in order to become the one you should not have killed. This is clarified by the good ending of FNAF 3. The Golden Freddy mask is still missing, which reappears in the ending of Ultimate Custom Night. One of these spirits in Golden Freddy becomes the one you should not have killed. Now, this could be Cassidy. She does say in the logbook, the party was for you. The Happiest Day party was meant for Dave. But it seems to me like Cassidy is the one receiving Happiest Day. We see it in the logbook, and it matches perfectly with the 6 graves in the Lorekeeper ending. Cassidy is among the spirits. She was put to rest along with the others, but the 7th victim's grave, Dave, is nowhere to be found. The party was supposed to be for him too, but he didn't show up. You see, we still haven't addressed the other UCN intermission, the Bear of Vengeance, a bear who tries putting an end to the Fox's reign of terror, but the bear is always outsmarted, punished, and humiliated by the Fox. This offers insight into the sibling rivalry between Michael and Dave. Michael is the fox, scaring his brother with the Foxy mask, and the crying child is the bear, falling into Michael's traps. It's why the bear uses the fox's favorite TV show as a distraction, Mike's favorite show, Immortal and the Restless. It's why he plots revenge on his birthday, just like the birthday party from FNAF 4. And finally, we have the sister, Elizabeth, the Mangle, she's stuck in the middle of their drama, but favors Mike to avoid confrontation. This is why the bear is forced to do the fox's laundry, make him breakfast, chores that older siblings would force their younger siblings to do. While the fox and Mangle reside at a house, the bear resides next to a tree just like we see in both the Toy Chica cutscenes and the Lore Keeper ending. These scenes clarify Dave has a mentality of vengeance, the bear of vengeance, the vengeful spirit. What if Dave is the one you should not have killed? This spirit is described with male pronouns. He references personal lines that William told him, and when he finally decides to rest, he meets with Old Man Consequences at a clearing in the woods, just like the spot where he was murdered. This same Easter egg appears in FNAF World, and when you exit that minigame, you're left with a screen called Happiest Day. It's all he ever wanted, to be appreciated by his family, his brother and his father. This is his happiest day. We know Michael makes up for what he's done. He redeems himself. He's the hero who puts the spirits to rest, and Mike is finally forgiven in his brother's eyes. But William doesn't get to go out the same way. Out of all the victims of William Afton, the one you should not have killed would have been Dave. He was the one who had a big motive. After all the things William has done to him, deception, experimentation, murder, he would be the one that would want revenge the most. Afton's first victim. Maybe Dave will finally get his revenge after all this time, torturing his father in an endless cycle of his own experiments. This time, Dave's no longer the subject. It's William.